Hi everybody. So it is December 31st in the afternoon and I am finally getting around in the family to our Christmas celebrations, which we didn't get to do because we were sick. We have some friends coming over later today, but right now I am just drinking some tea and getting caught up on watching Vlogmas. So I'm watching Sage's videos right now. And I just finished a crochet project, which I will insert some beauty shots of here, but it is a like crochet hooded cowl scarf type thingy. Oops, as I knock over everything on my desk. It uses the bobble stitch, which I'm obsessed with. I love the bobbles and how cute it looks. I've only ever done a project with that stitch one time before, and that was way earlier this year. I made a headband, which I was thinking about wearing today, but I think I might actually change my mind because right now I'm wearing this lovely trans pride cowl that my Secret Santa person crocheted for me in the it used to be called the American Girls podcast, but now it's called Dolls of Our Lives. We have a Discord group, and we did a penny pincher holiday gift exchange to exchange things that were handmade. So to my secret person, I sent some of the games that I've designed, because those are quite literally the definition of handmade and DIY, and I received this in return. So we're gonna have a good Christmas time celebration, have all of the foods that we put off having. As for reading, right now I am making my way through A Marvelous Light, as I said previously. It's not like really hooking me right now. I'm still less than 100 pages in though, so that may change. It might just be like a book that's a little bit more slow to warm up. But yeah, right now it's these two men who are like British civil servants in a land where magic is real, and one of them has had a curse placed on him. They are trying to break the curse together. That's where we're at right now. And it's like, okay, we've taken a while to get there. So I'm hoping that this is just a book that is slow to warm up, because I really want to enjoy it. That's that for now. I will check back in when I have more reading to update you on. The ferocious tracker is trying to follow the mail carrier around. It's very difficult when the mail carrier doesn't let you get inside the mail truck. But you are a dog. Life is rough. Hi, it is, I almost said December, it's January 3rd, and I thought I would give you a quick reading update before I have therapy. Plus, I have kind of a little bit of a book haul, since I received a couple more books as gifts for the holidays. But for starters, I am over halfway through A Marvelous Light, and I'm sorry, y'all. It's just not doing it for me. This is going to be another one of those like popular books that it seems like everyone loves, but it's not working out so good for me. I just find it boring. And I'm wondering if this is just, I'm not in the mood for something like this, but really I think it's just that I find Fantasy of Manners to be a tough sell for me. Like, I really enjoy the sort of Jane Austen and like other 18th, early 19th century novels that these books draw a lot from, but it's like the modern day Fantasy of Manners I usually just find incredibly boring. And like, that's not really what I want out of a romance, a fantasy, or a mystery, because this kind of has mystery elements. So I'm probably going to keep reading it because book club is tomorrow, but after the meeting is over, I'm just going to let this one go. So I wanted to also share a couple different books that I got for the holidays as gifts. Since my book haul video, I don't know if that's gonna go live soon. Anyway, I filmed that separately, but a few of these my husband gave to me, so let's do those first. One is this absolutely beautiful edition of Alice in Wonderland, which is one of my favorite books that's got all these gorgeous, like, lift the flap and interactive bits that you can kind of do. You can tell that paper engineering on this is so beautiful, and the illustrations are too. So I've been meaning to reread this book or these books because it's also got Through the Looking Glass, because of course it should. And I've been meaning to reread these books recently, and I think that like having this nice new edition is going to be the perfect excuse. He also got me Revenge of the Librarians, cartoons by Tom Gold. This is a guy that does like funny little comic strips, and I always read his books when I go to the bookstore. I just have never purchased any of them for myself. And then he also got me two other graphic novels. One is Hard Ears by Matthew Clark and Nigel Lynch, and this is an Afrofuturist kind of superhero fantastical looking story. And then the other one is Bolero by Wyatt Kennedy and Luana Vecchio, and this is a queer speculative sci-fi graphic novel. He knows me well, what can I say? And then the others I was gifted as presents from friends. One of these is Tasting the Past, Recipes from George III to Victoria by Jackie Wood. This is a gift from my friend Lydia, and it is a historical cookbook. So probably sometime this month, I am going to try and make some weird 18th or 17th century recipes. This one called Almond Hedgehog is something that I really want to make because it just sounds really weird, and it's something that like they used to make in Georgian England as a dessert. It's kind of like a jello, weirdly, but it's been updated for modern kitchens. Everything is in the metric system, and none of my kitchen equipment, I guess, is, so I'm gonna have to get really good at doing my math conversions on the fly, but there's that. And then my friend Spencer got me volumes 2 and 3 of Blue Period by Tsubasa Yamaguchi. This is a manga series that he got me into reading earlier, or later last year, I guess I should say. And it's about a boy in high school who doesn't really know like what he wants to do with his life or what the point is of anything. He's like full of all this high school existential dread. And one day he stumbles into a meeting for his high school's art club and falls in love with painting and making artwork, decides that suddenly he's going to become an artist and try and get into one of the most prestigious and like competitive universities for art in Tokyo, and then realizes he has a lot to learn about what it takes to be an artist. It isn't just making things that look pretty. There's actual like training and skill involved, as well as passion and like innate talent. I read the first book a little while ago and really, really enjoyed it, so I'm definitely looking forward to continuing on with the series. So those are, unless somebody randomly mails me something else in the mail, those are gonna be, I think, the last books for book haul for January, at least for things that people have gifted me. I'm sure at some point I'm gonna buy another book or get a library book. Yeah, I kind of just lost my train of thought there. So I'm gonna leave you here, and I'm gonna get ready to go to therapy. I will check back in with you in a little bit. What you looking for? We have no dogs and no mail carrier today. Just some random garbage so far.
That makes perfect sense.
You know how Gemma was stalking the mail carrier the other day? Look whose truck just went by. It's like she was waiting. It's like she knew. Didn't you? Good morning. It is another rainy Seattle day out here. And I'm just getting here situated with some morning coffee. I figured I would update you about the books that I've been reading. What is today? Today is like December 10th, or not December, oh my God, January. So yeah, I just dropped my friend Colin off at the airport last night. We had a great time at the convention that the two of us were vending at. It was wonderful. It was everything that I could have hoped for. I'll probably include some more things later on in the vlog about like how it went, but the TLDR right now is that it was very successful and we both had a great time, and I will definitely be doing that again. As far as books go, I decided to DNF A Marvelous Light a little over than halfway through. It just wasn't hooking me, and I think the sort of lack of any sense of urgency within the plot or connection between the two characters that was not very superficial was just not drawing me in, and I was like, there's no point in me continuing to read this because it just doesn't interest me, and that's why I'm reading this book, you know, like, because I want it to literally be interesting in the sense that it holds my interest, and it doesn't. So I let it go. I'm trying to be better about DNFing things. So Erin, if my friend Erin is watching this, hold me to it, because I know we've talked about both of us struggling to DNF things, and I did it. I've also been listening to an audiobook off and on, Even Greater Mistakes. It is a short story collection by Charlie Jane Anders, who's an author that I really like. And my library just had the audiobook ready to go. It's been fantastic so far. It's been one of the strongest short story collections that I've read, period. And that's really hard to do, especially considering how much of her career the stories span. And just the fact that usually when you compile a story collection, it's going to be a little bit uneven because some of the stories are stronger than the others. And with this one, I mean, that's true, but they're all good is what I mean. I'm really enjoying it. I've probably got 3 or 4 short stories left, which I think is about 2.5 hours. It's a long book. It's like a 15 hours long audiobook. But it's really, really good. I really loved the novella in it, Rock Manning Goes for Broke, which she had originally written as a novel and then edited it down to a novella that was then published in serial format. So I love that this anthology also takes her stories that were published in various different literary magazines and collects them all in one place. Really good. I've also been rereading old friend of the channel, The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is one of my favorite books ever. It looms very large in the sci-fi fantasy, canon, for whatever that's worth. But it's really great. If you haven't heard of it yet, it's about a group of people living on the planet of winter. They're called Gathenians, and they have no fixed sort of like gender roles or sex characteristics. They can like change their bodies at will depending on when they're having sex, you know, like who's going to be the one that like could potentially get pregnant and who is going to be the one that would do the impregnating. But it's about how their entire society is kind of organized around this. And there's like political intrigue and sci-fi tensions between big colonial projects of this thing called the Ecumen that's trying to bring all of the planets under this one political umbrella, and the planets that don't want to be involved in that. I feel like I'm not doing the greatest job at explaining it. It's kind of difficult to say exactly what this book is about, but it is also about, like, it is a love story. I think ultimately that's what I would describe it as. I wouldn't call it a romance, but it is a love story, and it's fantastic. I haven't read this book since 2020, but I reread it every few years, and I have been meaning to this entire time. I've also been enjoying reading the comics Middle West. Let me zoom out on myself a little, which are written by Scotty Young and artwork by Jorge Corona. This is a comic series. It's pretty short, actually. It's only 3 volumes. Kind of about this boy named Abel and this family intergenerational cycle of trauma and abuse. He has an abusive dad that can literally turn into a giant storm, kind of like a tornado. And then Abel, you know, is running away from his father, who is this giant tornado wrecking the town, you know, very obviously great handling of a metaphor for this, but then realizes that he also has what's called the heart of a storm inside of him. And it's a lot about him kind of struggling with and reckoning with this, going back into, you know, his family's history and his own past to break this cycle of abuse and trauma. It's really, really good. I'm enjoying it a lot. The first volume had like one of the strongest single issue openings to a comic book series that I have read ever. Literally ever. Just let that sink in. It was incredible. And I will say, you know, obviously there are some pretty serious content warnings for, you know, familial abuse, parental abuse, and family trauma. But this metaphor that Scotty Young uses for it of like these men that have hearts of storms living inside of them, and the way that it is all laid out on the page in terms of the destruction that's caused by people's pain and hurt, but also their choices to be destructive and their choices to hurt the people in their lives, contrasted with the things that it actually takes to heal and recover from that, is handled very, very well. It's not too heavy-handed. It isn't just cliched or trite somehow. Like, this book knows what it's about. So I'm almost finished with book 2. I'm going to have to go pick up book 3. I'll probably order it from my comic shop because I don't think they had it on the shelf last time I was there, and I'm really liking it so far. So I don't know if you can hear that, but that car really needs to get their brakes checked out. Anyways, that's what I've got for right now. I'll check back in when I've read a little bit more of these different things, and we're about halfway through the month at this point. It's January 12th. It's been a good reading month so far, you know, both in terms of me sticking with books that I really want to be reading and DNFing books that I don't want to be reading. So, having a good time. I'll talk to you soon.
So we came to see Meg today.
Oh, yes, we did.
She's
yes, we
losing
did.
it. Maggie.
Belly rub. Yeah. Yeah. She's got that just like tattered fur of a rescue.
I know.
She's gonna be so beautiful and built up over time.
She's so perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And just like a Goldberg dog, offered her a treat, and she was like, nah, and dropped it on the floor. This is the way.
So I got right here some yard work. We have a downed tree limb that I have broken up to fill this entire composter. It's like 10 gallons or something ridiculous like that. Oh wait, there's still a tree left. I need a hatchet.
I don't know. I wasn't.
The baby. Oh, I see.
Okay, let's go.
She is all excited by all the smells in the car. Yeah.
Oh, you must be so tired. She's fascinated by the seatbelt noises. Did you hear me?
Look, sorry, I didn't hear you now.
She's fascinated by the seatbelt noises. Oh, baby. Yeah. First morning walk. Well,
First morning
Gemma's
walk.
hiding. There she is. So many smells.
She's been much more curious about what's going on with Meg than she has been.
Yeah, with
Anything outside.
anything else. All right, you. Let's move forward. You've got some puppy zoomies to get out. Yeah, follow the big sis. Hey, it's Monday, January 30th? Yeah, January 30th. And I have not updated this reading vlog in a little bit, so I want to do that now before I go get started with the rest of my day. So I have been, what was the last thing I said? I have been reading a lot of different stuff. I finished two audiobooks. One of them was Summer Water by Sarah Moss. I wasn't really honestly a huge fan of that one. It billed itself as kind of a suspenseful story of linked vignettes told over the course of a single day. And it really reminded me of To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. But it also said that it was going to be a suspenseful story, and I honestly didn't find it to be particularly suspenseful or interesting. It honestly just felt kind of boring, and the writing wasn't like, I don't know, the writing didn't really have its hooks in me. So, I could take or leave that one. It wasn't my favorite. And then I finished reading or listening to Several People Are Typing, which is a novel that is told entirely over Slack messages at a workplace. And it's about a person who is at that workplace and their soul, mind, something, you know, the essence of who they are gets trapped in the company Slack while their body is just chilling in their apartment. I heard about this on Sage's channel, and I really like the recommendations that Sage gives. We seem to have pretty similar tastes when it comes to trans and queer literature. And this was a queer story as well. I feel like I should mention that. I really liked this book. I think that it was very ambitious, and I think it did a great job of adapting the sort of group chat text medium into a novel, which is really hard to do. Just, you know, look at any person writing like young adult fiction in the early 20 teens trying to put texting into a novel. It's really hard to do it well. I don't know that the book necessarily succeeded at being a great novel, but it was really interesting to read, and I appreciated the experimentation with form that the author was doing, even though I think the last half of the book, execution, didn't really stick the landing much for me. What else did I finish reading? I read the first 2 volumes of Middle West, which I am enjoying a lot. I think I mentioned that in a previous clip. I'm going to finish the 3rd one, and then I'll probably share my thoughts about the series as a whole. What else did I finish? I read a book called Other Minds by Peter Godfrey Smith, which I believe was a recommendation from Fariba. She and I have very similar tastes in reading books about like animals. And this is a book about the octopus and theory of the mind and the evolution of consciousness down a different evolutionary track than gave us, you know, humans and the other mammals, birds, etc. This book was, I thought it was going to be more of a nature book when I picked it up. I thought it was going to be more octopus specific, but it turns out that the author is actually a philosopher, like a professor of philosophy, and his research area is philosophy of science. So it wound up being a book that was a lot more about the theory of the mind than kind of the science of octopuses, but I did learn a lot from it. I learned a lot from reading about the way that like octopus brains and nervous systems have developed differently from humans and, the others down this other evolutionary tree away from the mollusks. It was really fascinating. Like I said, I feel like I really learned a lot. And when I read like nature nonfiction, I always like to come away knowing something that I didn't know before. So that book was pretty good. I think I gave it 4 out of 5. And I gave the 2 audiobooks 3 out of 5. Yeah. I'm going to go get the other comics that I read, and I'll be back in a second. I feel like in some ways January has been a month of me reading books that were very ambitious and did not do so good on the execution of the promise that they began with. So the next 2 books are comics that I got as Christmas gifts from my husband, and I think I gave both of them 3 out of 5. The first one is Bolero, which is written by Wyatt Kennedy with art by Luana Vecchio. This is kind of a story, it reminds me very similarly of like a Russian Doll or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, about a girl named Devon who is kind of a mess. Like, she is the classic sort of messy protagonist, and she begins to try and solve a lot of the personal problems in her life, her difficulty with, emotional intimacy, her addictions, her honestly just pure selfishness, by discovering a way to hop into a parallel universe. And this story is about like her realizing that, living your life is not just about avoiding pain at all costs and running away from your problems, but it's actually about living through a lot of those things that can cause you pain and discomfort, because it's worth it to be there and show up for your life and be present. This book was really great until about the final issue, where I don't know if it was a combination of the writing or the paneling or what, but the story just started to get kind of confusing and incomprehensible. And I was like, wait a minute, it became very difficult to follow. And so I think like the resolution of the tale kind of fell apart in that final issue, which is a big part of what made this not as good as I thought it would be. But I really did love the artwork, the way that the story was told through both this very personal, like you could really tell Wyatt Kennedy was working through a lot of his own personal demons with this, even before I read the author's note. Sometimes you can just tell. And there's very clearly a lot of care and thought that went into it. So this was his first book. I would really like to see him write more things. Luana Vecchio has been working in indie comics for forever. And yeah, really, really enjoyed this, even though it kind of didn't stick the landing. And then I also finished reading Hard Ears by Matthew Clark with art by Nigel Lynch. This is kind of a, I don't want to say Afrofuturist because it's not just that, sort of like futurist, speculative, fantastical, pan-Caribbean comic, just a standalone book that takes place in a kind of fictional world that is like a speculative version of the various Caribbean islands. And again, this is a story where it's like the vibe of it is everything. There really isn't, there's kind of a plot, but I feel like this really is about the atmosphere and the mood a lot more than it is about the story. And the artwork for this really makes the book, like the writing and the story, there's like clearly a lot of different interesting ideas for world building, and the way that it works in this world and how much comes from like folklore and mythology and all of these other things. But really it's about the mood. It's about like this sense of place and culture that the artwork evokes rather than a story. So it was good. I wound up giving it 3 out of 5 again though, because I tend to prefer pieces that are a little bit more like plotted and a little less mood pieces, if that makes sense. So that for me was really more of a matter of personal taste, not that there was anything wrong with the book. So yeah, those are my 2 sort of the books were very ambitious in what they tried to accomplish, and I appreciated and respected that, even if I felt that they didn't stick the landing. And then we'll do the next 2. These were probably like the 2 standout books for me from this month, and then I'll tell you what I'm sort of currently reading in the February reading vlog, because I don't think I'm going to finish any other books before February. But I read Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, which I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Like, by the end of this year, that's probably still going to be the best book I read all year. It is one of the best books that I have ever read in my life. I know I'm a little bit behind on it, but when that book came out, it was like sort of the height of our lockdown era here in Seattle, and I could not get a hold of it. Like, I couldn't get a hold of a copy from the library. I was like, I can't buy a new hardcover right now. It's too expensive. It was totally worth the wait, but at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I didn't read this sooner. I think Piranesi is a book that it's best to go into knowing as little as possible. But if you like just sort of weird magical stories about people traveling to worlds that are not our own, I would say if you are a fan of The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis, The Magicians series by Lev Grossman, or any of those other sort of takes on academic travels in a magical world, you will love this book. If you like literary fiction, you will love this book. There are so many cool allusions to classics and that sort of thing. I'm not going to say any more about it because I think you just need to read it. I think you just need to experience it. But yeah, that was easily the best book I read this month. And then the other sort of best book that I read was The Call Out by Kat Fitzpatrick. I actually bought this when my friend Colin came to visit. And it is a novel that's told entirely in verse, entirely in sonnets, even down to the table of contents is a Shakespearean sonnet. The acknowledgments are a Shakespearean sonnet. It's just really incredible. And it is like, again, this is a sort of slice of life poetry. So yeah, like I was saying, this is a novel in verse that is about queer and trans girl culture in New York City that centers around some interpersonal relationship conflicts and a subsequent call out on social media and the fallout of all of that. This is a book for the queer and trans person who is steeped in the culture of the extremely online and the sort of tension between various generations of queers in terms of like what is the acceptable way to be queer, not in the sense that it's acceptable to straight people or acceptable to the outside, but acceptable within the community. And this is a story about like within community conflict. I don't know if you'll get it if you're not in the community, but it was so good. I loved this experiment with form. I loved that it reminded me so much of, hi, it's my puppy, Eugene Ogenin. You want to read the books? Meg, you want to read? Are you helping? So yeah, it reminded me of Eugene Ogenin. It reminded me of Alexander Pope's Rape of the Lock. If you're really into that kind of poetry or verse, even if you're not, I'd highly recommend it. I don't think you have to be into poetry to enjoy this book. It's written in a style that is very accessible to people that are not comfortable with poetry. The language is not stilted, but it is very clever. And if, like me, you are a sucker for poetry and a sucker for form, you will probably adore this book. I'm gonna read it and reread it over and over again. And I should also mention, I also found out about this because of Sage. So thank you, Sage, much appreciated. I think that's gonna be it for the January reading vlog because, like I said, I'm in the middle of some other books, but they are all long enough that I don't think I'm gonna finish them between today and tomorrow being the last 2 days of January. So really good reading month for me. Had a lot of fun with the books that I did read. I didn't really read anything that was like bad or majorly disappointing. And I'm calling it now. Piranesi might wind up being my favorite book of 2023. So we shall see. So yeah, if you like this video and you want to see more of what I do, the best way to do that is to subscribe to the channel, because you get updated every time I post a new video. I have been posting a lot of VODs of myself streaming video games recently. So if you're into that kind of thing, you can watch those as well. And there's also like links for ways to financially support the channel down below, like either joining my Patreon or buying me a coffee or, you know, whatever you feel so inclined if you have a spare dollar, but only a spare one, mind. yeah, so thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in February. Bye.